Hello students, good morning and welcome to this class again, and today the chapter is chapter 8, how do organisms reproduce, for CBSE class 10. The first page, the first para, it is mentioned why this function or this system is so important, because for maintaining life the reproductive system is not necessary like other systems, respiratory, digestive, excretory. But even then, why it is so important? It is so important because if an individual does not reproduce, after its end there will be no other organism in that particular group or species. We would not see any individual, any organism in that group anymore if that individual does not reproduce. So reproduction is so important for the continuation of species, continuation of group and generations. So I would say that reproduction is essential for existence of all living beings. In the second para, it has been mentioned that do organisms create exact copies for themselves, of themselves? So when they reproduce, are they producing exact copies? No, they are not producing exact copies, otherwise all look identical, all will look identical. So how this happens? This happens because when the nucleus is dividing in cell division, the chromosomes are also dividing, and the genetic material, which is the DNA in the genes, deoxyribonucleic acid, you must have heard. So this is being copied to the offsprings, and during this copying some errors take place. So these errors are making the differences. That is why all the offsprings are not identical. They can be similar to their parents, to one another also, but not identical. And this is because of the errors in the copying of the DNA. But DNA copying is so important because it is linked with reproduction. Because of the DNA copying only, the similar characters of the parents are being carried to the offspring, and that is why it is also easy to identify sometimes. So the parents and the offsprings, because similarities are there, the strength, the good characters of the parents are transferred to the offsprings also. So this is very, very important, the DNA copying. But there are errors, and that is why errors in copying, that is why variations are there. So DNA copying, students, is very, very important, that you have to remember. That I just read few lines in the first page for your better understanding. Therefore, a basic event in reproduction is the creation of a DNA copy. Cells use chemical reactions to build copies of their DNA. This creates two copies of the DNA in a reproducing cell, and they will need to be separated from each other. However, keeping one copy of DNA in the original cell and simply pushing the other one would not work. So here you have to understand that only pushing one copy to the offspring will not suffice, will not solve the purpose, because the DNA copies have to be transferred with the other cell apparatus so that the other processes of the cell also continue with the DNA transfer. So that is why the entire cell apparatus, new cell apparatus, has to be transferred along with the DNA. So this is very important to understand, and this has been mentioned in the bottom of the first page. And in the second page, some important lines are there in the at the back of the first page, in the first para, at the bottom. There are few lines again. I will like to read it. Thus, the surviving cells are similar to, but subtly different from each other. This inbuilt tendency for variation during reproduction is the basis for evolution, as we will discuss in the next chapter. So, the variation is equally important as compared to the transfer of similar characters in reproduction, because variation only will give rise to new species, and that will only add to the evolution of living organisms. And in the back of the first page, in the second page, at the bottom, the importance of variation has again been mentioned, and it is not only because of the errors in the DNA copying, but also because of some changes in the genes, maybe due to sudden environmental changes. Like here, example of bacteria has been given. In water body, suddenly temperature rises, so most of the bacteria are killed, but few of them resist the high temperature and they survive, they keep on surviving. So there must be some changes in their genes to tolerate the high temperature. So like this, variation also takes place, and this can give rise to a new species also. So variations are responsible for giving rise to new species. So these are the substances which have been mentioned in your first page of the book. And then in the second page, modes of reproduction used by single organism. So that is asexual reproduction, students, have been mentioned here in page number 129, and these all describe the asexual reproduction, that is where single parent is only involved. So any part of the parent, cell division will take place and new offsprings will be born. So these are the methods, and in your book fission is there, and in fission what is written? Fission is the method in asexual reproduction or single parent reproduction, where fission means split. So nucleus will split into two if it is binary fission, and if it is splitting into many parts, it is multiple fission. So this has been mentioned in your book of CBSE book. In the second page, for unicellular organisms, cell division or fission, it takes place in the unicellular organisms, leads to the creation of new individuals. Many different patterns of fission have been observed. Many bacteria and protozoa simply split into two equal halves during cell division. In organisms such as amoeba, the splitting of the two cells during division can take place in any plane. So students, I would suggest you to read this book page by page, and every word, don't miss any word. Then it is covering the entire chapter very thoroughly. And if you just miss some words, some lines, you may miss some important point. So this I would suggest you, and I will keep on explaining as per the matters given in your books in my next videos. So I will end this part 1 of the chapter how do organisms reproduce for CBSE class 10, and in my next video I will cover the other parts. So till then, thank you so much for patient listening, and I hope these are benefiting you. Thank you so much. God bless.